Namaste and welcome to another edition of the Bharatvaarta Weekly. It's a bright and beautiful sunny morning here in Bangalore. Hey Abhishek, what's up? How's life?
Hi, Kai. Hope you're doing better.
Yeah, doing better, I suppose. We have plenty of events to run you through today. It's been an action-packed week, I should say. Of course, there is the continuing political drama unfolding in Maharashtra. And US Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has proposed a resolution against India. There was the successful launch of the VL-SRSAM missile, then the attack on Congress President Rahul Gandhi's office at Wayanad. In more optimistic news, we had Indian diplomats returning to Afghanistan and the Supreme Court giving a clean chit to Prime Minister Modi in the Gujarat riots of 2002. All of this and more in today's edition. But before we begin, I should say that, Prasanna was right about the NDA nomination for president, right? Abhishek, if you remember, he had mentioned that, it could be someone else. So we wish Ms. Draupadi Murmu all the very best for the nomination. Also, we put out a very interesting episode last week with Aniket Dogar, who is the founder and CEO of Haq Darshak, on delivering social welfare. We've seen, especially during COVID, something like 80 crore people were, beneficiaries of various welfare schemes, including ration and so on. And this is going to get more and more relevant for us. I mean, we're a very big nation, large and complex, and delivering social welfare at the last mile is really tricky. We spoke about the various nuances on this with Aniket, and it's really a wonderful episode. I hope you guys catch that. All right, moving on to the first piece of news for the week. The political crisis in Maharashtra continues to deepen. In case you haven't been following, Eknath Shinde, along with 11 other MLAs of Shiv Sena, flew to Surat in Gujarat and claimed to have meetings with the BJP leaders there. On 22nd June, Shinde stated that he had moved 40 legislators to Guwahati. Uddhav Thackeray, the current Chief Minister of Maharashtra, then offered to step down as the leader of the current Alliance government and as Chief Minister. These rebel MLAs are now part of are now set to have a meeting at 12 noon today in a Guwahati hotel to discuss further strategy. Abhishek, I mean, what do you make about these developments? Pretty interesting, I would think.
Yeah, I think resort politics is back once again. I think it happens once or twice every year in various states. Yeah, interesting developments in Maharashtra. This seems like a civil war within the Shiv Sena. So, as we know, the background is that 2.5 years back, BJP and Shiv Sena had comfortably won a majority in the assembly election, with BJP about 105 seats and Shiv Sena some 55 odd seats. And then, due to disagreements about, I suppose, the chief ministership, the Shiv Sena decided to break away from the NDA and join hands with NCP Congress to form the government, right? So in some ways, right from the start, one could argue that the mandate was not for the Mahavikas Aghadi government. It was clearly for an NDA government, but Shiv Sena chose to go the other side. And now about 2.5 years later, we are seeing this big breakup happening within their party, or at least within their MLAs, right? And Eknath Shinde has sort of mandate was, I don't know what are the exact numbers that he has, but clearly more than half, right? And close to 2/3 of the MLAs are apparently siding with him. Now, there is obviously a lot of chatter that what he wants to do is basically form a BJP plus Sena government, right? With probably under the CM chief ministership of Mr. Fadnavis. But we'll have to wait and see how the Speaker of the Maharashtra Assembly treats this breakup. Before that, these guys have to also come back to Maharashtra and Mumbai, and we don't know how the street level cadre will react, which side they will take. I don't know how much support Uddhav Thackeray continues to have among the cadre of the Shiv Sena. I think the reason given by Eknath Shinde is that he felt that the Shiv Sena party under Uddhav Thackeray was not being true to their original ideology. They were going away from Hindutva, etc. So that's the publicly stated reasons. I think obviously inter-party dynamics and interpersonal dynamics might have also played a role, right? And he may not have felt he was given the importance he deserved, etc. So we'll just have to wait and see how this crisis finally gets cleared, right? Whether we get an alternative government, or whether Uddhav Thackeray survives, or whether we very soon get another assembly election. So that's something for us to wait and see.
Yeah. No, I think this fissure has been talked about earlier as well, right? I mean, the Bala Sahib Shiv Sena and the Uddhav Thackeray Shiv Sena is like miles apart in terms of ideology and so on. I think as a matter of political convenience, you're seeing some sort of a government here. But yeah, do stay tuned. We will bring you an exclusive episode. Hopefully, we'll have Rohit Jayaraman, a political commentator, speaking about the various nuances of this developing story. Moving on, we had the Australian Defense Minister, Mr. Richard Marles, visit India. And the visit was aimed at strengthening defense and security cooperation. He held a bilateral meeting with Defense Minister, Mr. Rajnath Singh. It's the first high-level visit from the new Australian government. Deputy Prime Minister Marles also met External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, and engaged national security and defense policymakers and personnel. Well, we put out a very comprehensive episode on Australian politics with Mr. Gray Connolly, who is, a renowned expert on all things politics and policy in Australia. Yeah, I mean, it covered a bunch of things like the new Labour government, what are their immediate objectives, how their views will be towards India and so on. So do check out that episode again, for the larger significance of some of these things. We've had multiple developing relationships like the AUKUS and the Quad and so on. And certainly, the new era of geopolitics is very interesting. And that episode really sheds light on, the Australian view of certain things, right? So, which is something that we don't hear too often. So definitely check out that episode with Mr. Gray Connolly and Velina Chakarova. And in other news, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has introduced a resolution to turn India into a country of particular concern. The representative from the US Congress has introduced this resolution to condemn human rights violations in India, specifically those targeting Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Dalits, Adivasis, and other religious and cultural minorities. Designating India as a country of particular concern can lead to economic sanctions in extreme cases. A consultative government body in the US, the US Commission on International Religious Freedom, has been recommending this designation over the past 3 years. Previously, Ilhan Omar was criticized by the Indian government for visiting POK earlier this year. Abhishek, I mean, does this really hold water? I mean, is this even important actually?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the particular US body that you talked about, right? They bring out these annual reports, and obviously every year they find a lot of countries in which they say that religious freedom is not up to the mark. I think, and obviously India also continues to feature every year as a country that they highlight, right, where religious freedom is not there. So I think the way they look at it is like India has some of these states where we have anti-conversion laws, right? And from a United States lens, and this body obviously has a very Christian-centric viewpoint, right? And so they look at anti-conversion laws as being restrictive of religious freedom. Then there are certain news items every year where there are clashes between various religious groups in India. So that also is something they bring attention to. So I think this continues to be an annual affair, and I don't know if this resolution introduced by Ilhan Omar will gain a lot of traction. But I don't think, whatever the outcome of the resolution, I don't think US is right now in a position to be, you know, giving out sanctions to a country like India, given the, delicate geopolitical situation on many fronts.
No, not just geopolitical. I mean, even their internal situation is pretty bad, right? I mean, we saw the Roe versus Wade decision, last week, and there are supposedly mass protests lined up for this weekend. So, it's a very fissured country, right? I mean, whether on gun rights or on abortion and plenty of other things. So the internal strife is such that I mean, they don't have the moral standing to lecture anyone really on these things, as you mentioned. Yeah, and for more details on this, do check out the episode we did with Ruchir and Vishal, right, on how the US media is part of the deep state, and how it views some of these things, and how it's active part of geopolitics itself and policy itself, right? So yeah, I mean, it's just a battering ram used to kind of hold India back. But of course, I mean, India's stature is has grown in the world today, right? We've gone far beyond how some of these things can affect us, like it was earlier. So yeah, I mean, that's that. Moving on. In some positive news, the VL-SRSAM missile system was successfully test fired earlier this week. The vertical launch short range surface to air missile is a completely indigenously developed shipborne weapon system. It has been designed to strike at the high speed airborne targets at the range of 40 to 50 kilometers and at an altitude of around 15 kilometers. VLSRSAM is a canisterized system, which means it is stored and operated from specially designed compartments. In the canister, the inside environment is controlled, thus making its transport and storage easier and improving the shelf life of weapons. We're going to be doing a more extensive discussion on defense indigenization and army reforms and so on and so forth. Of course, I mean, you've been seeing what's happening on the Agniveer front, and we will cover some of this stuff in that longer episode. If you have suggestions for who we should invite as guests, I mean, feel free to let us know on social media. We'll definitely have these people over. But yeah, I mean, this is a longer discussion that will be covered in that episode. In political news, Rahul Gandhi's office in Wayanad was vandalized by a group of students of the Students' Federation of India. The SFI activists were protesting a new Supreme Court directive that made it mandatory for every protected forest tract and wildlife sanctuary to have an eco-sensitive zone, or ESZ, of 1 kilometer from its boundaries. The unexpected attack sparked protests from Congress across Kerala, with its workers taking to the streets in all districts, clashing with police and damaging CPIM campaign boards. CPIM distanced itself from the incident, with Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan condemning the incident. Well, I mean, of all the things that people could protest, I mean, this is certainly unusual, right, Abhishek?
Yeah, it's kind of humorous to think that a Supreme Court judgment led to SFI cadre attacking Rahul Gandhi. Like, it's a very weird sort of chain of events, right? But just reading about it, it seems this has been an ongoing issue where folks in Kerala have been against these various Supreme Court rulings or directions coming, where they want this environmentally protected zones around some of these natural resources or parks, etc., right? And the problem is, once a zone is sort of notified, then you need to clear that from human habitation, right? And that causes sort of problems for the local people residing there, obviously. So how Rahul Gandhi gets involved in it, I'm not too sure, but yeah, interesting development here.
Yeah. No, he's the people's representative there at Wayanad, right? So, you know, uh, in other news, Indian diplomats have returned to Afghanistan. India has also sent 27 tons of emergency relief assistance for the people of Afghanistan in the aftermath of the 5.9 magnitude earthquake that killed more than 1,000 people. The Taliban welcomed India's decision to send diplomats and a technical team to the embassy in Kabul to quote, continue the relations with the Afghan people and their humanitarian assistance. A Taliban spokesman said the Taliban assures all existing embassies that the security of their compounds will be taken care of in line with international diplomatic practices. I mean, a new era in geopolitics starts, right, with India and Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, given the developments of the previous year, right, with the US moving out and the Taliban coming in, India did have to, prioritize the safety of its mission there and bring back all diplomats, right? But now it's a fact that the Taliban is here and here to stay, and so gradually, diplomats are returning back, and unfortunately, there is this very large earthquake, right, in Afghanistan, a lot of loss of life and property. And so India is definitely helping out along with other nations. And this is like a good segue to sort of start a diplomatic relation with Taliban. At the end of the day, we can't really, choose who our neighbors are and who is in power, right? But Afghanistan being very strategic location, it is of paramount importance to India that the ruling dispensation does not become totally anti-India and sort of aid and enable more terrorism against India, right? And so that's a relationship for India to manage carefully.
Yeah. We've done multiple episodes on Afghanistan, obviously. Some of these during the Velina's talk series, and also, I mean, we did one specifically on Central Asian republics. Do check that episode out. We'll link it in the description. And finally, the Supreme Court gave a clean sheet to Prime Minister Modi in the Gujarat riots. The Supreme Court has dismissed a petition filed by Zakia Jafri that questioned the clean sheet by the Special Investigation Team to Prime Minister Narendra Modi and 63 others for their alleged role in the violence. Kapil Sibal, who appeared for Zakia Jafri, told the top court that the SIT did not conduct an investigation but did a collaborative exercise, and its probe was fraught with omissions to protect conspirators. I mean, do you think this bogey of 2002 will ever come to an end, Abhishek?
No, not really, in the sense, I think everyone has made up their opinion a long time back, right? So those who are in the small minority, I guess, right now in the country, who feel CM Modi then or the Gujarat administration was complicit in the riots, they are not going to get convinced by any court verdict or any SIT, right? So they will continue to believe and that these people, the administration there and Narendra Modi was complicit in the riot. So the rest of the country has probably moved on. He has got elected twice as the prime minister of the country, and so this is all very distant history for most of the population of India, I would say. But yeah, I think this was yet another sort of thing that reached the Supreme Court via the plea of Zakia Jafri. But I think Supreme Court basically said that whatever the SIT conducted, it conducted, with proper diligence, and all materials required for the investigation were collated and deliberated, and then the SIT had given a clean chit. So basically, the Supreme Court endorsed the investigation, and whatever was found by the SIT, right? Uh, and also, they said that there were various parties, such as Tista Setalwad, were actually who had their own motives to sort of keep this case, burning, and so that was also something which the Supreme Court kind of brought out, right? That there were other motivated parties behind, keeping this case burning repeatedly. So I think since then, the Gujarat police has gone ahead and arrested Tista Setalwad in the last 1 or 2 days. That's the update that I read. But yeah, I think that part of the story is going to be in the news for some time to come, I guess.
Yeah, I think there are allegations of mishandling of finances and coercing witnesses and so on, right? I mean,
Yeah.
pretty egregious, I would say. And I mean, important to remember that there were 10 years of an opposition government that that wasn't necessarily very kind to Mr. Modi during this time, right? I mean, that and the fact that, I mean, he's perhaps the only chief minister who's been interrogated as much by an SIT, right? To something like 300 plus or 3000 plus hours, I think, right? Cumulative. Well, but as you say, I mean, people have already made up their mind one way or another, right? And this, I suppose, is for the history books, right? I mean, it's for the records, basically. And hopefully his good name will be cleared. All right, so that's the news and events for the week that was. We have a couple of interesting episodes coming up on Bharatvaarta. We're collaborating with the Indic Explorer, right? And the first episode is going to be about art, and more specifically, art in the underground. We're going to be talking to Ari Jaiprakash, who's an artist and musician, and he's going to be talking about various cultural aspects and so on. Also, I had another conversation with Dr. Bhushan Shukla. Some of you may remember that Dr. Bhushan appeared on episode 12 of Bharatvaarta way back when, in April of 2020, and we spoke about parenting and child health and so on. Yeah, he was back to talk about mental health and various nuances. Extremely fascinating episode. Both of these episodes coming up, and as I mentioned, we'll also be putting out a couple of episodes. One on the Maharashtra political saga that's ongoing, and of course the second on army reforms, defense reforms, and so on. For the army reforms episode, I mean, if you guys have suggestions on who we should host on Bharatvaarta, please let us know on social media. The links are in the description. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you again for joining us on Bharatvaarta this week. Stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.